Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien. Lead! And Livingston have the lead! Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livy, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. First of all, Happy New Year to all our listeners. This is our first episode of the year, and obviously New Year means Broonie's somehow making a return to Talk Livy. I'm joined by the wee man himself, the voice of LFC Live. How you doing, Broonie?
I'm back. Good to be back, and more importantly, great to be back at the stadium on Tuesday. Really looking forward to it.
We'll just call it a debacle prior to Christmas with fans not being allowed in, but luckily it's only lasted one game and common sense prevailed, and the SPFL did move the games forward despite Rangers' best interests. So that's always a good decision. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all our other episodes on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livy, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll start this one off by rounding up the comings and goings at Livy so far in the January transfer window.
I spoke with Dundee fan and DeeTV commentator Ethan Hampton. We discussed our upcoming game with Dundee as they make the trip to West Lothian.
Finally, we'll look ahead to our Scottish Cup fourth round tie as Ross County make the trip from the Highlands for an all Premiership clash.
It's the time of year when football fans across the country are scrolling the internet looking for the latest transfer rumours. We are no exception here on Talk Livy, and there's been a bit of movement in and out of the Tony Macaroni Arena this month already. So we'll first of all talk outgoings. Now, this one's not really a transfer as such, but first team coach and kind of head of the youth setup, Dougie Imrie, he's decided to take up the job at Green at Morton, which happened just after Christmas. What were your initial thoughts on that, Broonie?
Sad to see him go, to be fair, but you can't knock him, I don't think, for taking that job. Obviously he's part of a coaching setup at Livingston, but you're going to a team in the division below. Ultimately, you're becoming your own man as such. You're taking the first team. He's the actual manager now, so it's a good first job for him. Obviously, it's impacted us a wee bit, but we'll get on to his replacement in a minute or so. But he's started really well, hasn't he? So kind of pleased for him. He was always sort of around whenever I'd go on and speak to players after games and things like that. He was a good guy, and I'm sure he'll be sorely missed. But no qualms about him leaving in terms of looking after himself, and wish him all the best. He's certainly started very well as I say there. Another win for them at the weekend. Few ex-Livy men in that team flying as well. Gavin Riley obviously on loan from us. So no, pleased that he's doing well, but he might be a miss in terms of the coaching staff, but a good replacement that we've got in.
Yeah, just to kind of echo your thoughts on Dougie Imrie, it was I would class it as a bit of a coup for the club that we got him in the first place, given the job that he'd done at Hampton Accies with the 19s and his involvement in what is a renowned youth setup in Scottish football at Hamilton. So it was quite a coup for us to get him in to head up the youth side of things, and obviously coming in and doing the first team stuff as well. But it's the opportunity to go and be his own man, as you say, and he's played for Morton in the past. It's a club he'll know very well. He'll probably, I'm sure, know a lot of folk behind the scenes there. So can't wish him any ill feeling. I hope he does very well there. And as you say, he's got off to a very good start. But as you mentioned, there's a familiar face that's come in to replace him, which is Neil Hastings. Came through the youth setup himself at Livingston and has spent the last kind of 7 or 8 years since he's been away from the club building up his CV. What's your take on Neil Hastings returning?
Yeah, it's good to see him back, obviously. I think he was most recently at Gallifrey, I believe, as the manager there. I've got a few mates on the borders, and from what they've told me, turned a fairly mediocre team into a fairly good team. So, I mean, that can only be positive. As you mentioned, got a good CV on him. Obviously, didn't work out in the playing side of things. I believe injuries sort of ruined him, unfortunately. But, you know, he's a local guy. He'll know what it means to play for Livingston and things like that. He'll know what it means to the fans, and hopefully he can put that message across to the players. And yes, a good bit of recruitment from Davy. I think I read somewhere that when David first came into the club, Neil Hastings was there as well, and he was quite welcoming to him. So it's funny thing. These things go full circle, don't they? So no, it's good. Hopefully he'll come in. I don't know an awful lot about him. I'll be honest, but I believe you might have coached with him or something in the past, or
I went to college with Neil many moons ago. I don't know how popular he was with my lecturers at college, but no, that goes back to kind of the days where the Jacobs triplets were coming through, and Neil was involved in that very successful youth team at Livingston as well. So, but as you say, he was involved in the background team when Davy first came to the club. I think there's kind of, it resembles last season when Davy took the job on and he brought in Liam Fox. He brought in somebody that knows the club very well, probably still knows a lot of the backroom staff and the staff at the club, because they've not changed an awful lot over the years that he's been away. And I think it allows him to come in and bed in quite quickly. And I think that's where Davies maybe looked at it with Neil Hastings coming back as well. As you say, he's a local lad as well, and understands what the football club is about. And, you know, he's built up a very decent CV in his time away. I know he's been involved in youth setups. I think he actually helped with the youth setup when he was at Livingston as well in a coaching capacity. And you've touched on his stint at Gallifrey, I think he's recorded the highest ever league finish. And for a guy who's 29, 30 years old to go and be a manager in a men's changing room, it could be quite daunting. You know, he's probably similar ages with some of his players. So the guy's obviously got a bit of confidence in his ability as a coach as well. So here's hoping that he comes in and beds into the setup and adds to the backroom staff that's already at the club. But we'll get on to comings and goings in terms of the player and the squad. So there's been a few very early doors. Pretty much as soon as the window opened, we had 3 announcements pre-prepared to go. So Jack Hamilton's gone out on loan to Arbroath. Obviously, he was there last season as well. Harrison Clark's gone out on loan to Kelty Hearts. His loan at Arbroath came to an end, and then Harry Paniatu has gone back down south and joined Aldershot. What's kind of your feelings on those deals?
Starting with Jack Hamilton, I think that's a move that makes sense for all parties, doesn't it? Obviously, we'll get on to Newbley coming back. It's sort of one coming in, one going. In terms of that, he feels like a new signing coming in, but yeah, he hadn't really got the game time, Jack Hamilton. But you know, it's worked so far, hasn't it? He's scored at the weekend there. Arbroath absolutely flying. I mean, you'll be with me in this, Euan, and I think majority of Scottish football will be, in terms of willing Arbroath to go and win that championship or win the playoffs. It's a remarkable story. And the club have seemed to, Livingston that is, have seemed to play a wee bit of a part in that. The clubs seem to have a good relationship with each other. Obviously, Newbley there for the first half of the season. Jack will be there for the second half. And yeah, he was there before, wasn't he? Did very well. The fans seem to like him. So for me, it's a move that makes sense. I'm not that he's not a good player at all, but it's somebody that won't be missed in terms of, you know, he hasn't featured a lot for Livingston in the first team. So it's, as I say, a move that makes sense for all parties, for Livingston, for Arbroath, and probably most importantly for Jack himself in terms of his career. he'll get out. He's scoring goals now, and he's most importantly playing football. So that's good. Just on Harrison Clark as well, another guy with good potential. Played at Arbroath for the first half of the season there. Yeah, as I mentioned, they're flying. So I don't think he probably got the game time that, not that he expected, but maybe that he'd have wanted. So again, the move to Kelty makes sense. Another team that are doing well. I think they were 2-0 up at the weekend, took him off, and they drew 2-2. So make of that what you will. But so he's obviously had a decent impact there already. Yeah, that's a move that probably makes sense for all parties. Arbroath probably used him as a squad player, but he'll most likely come into Kelty featuring more regularly. And again, I keep saying it, but it is a good move for all parties with the third and final one you mentioned there, Harry Panayiotou. It didn't really work out for me. I think he saw flashes. I was a wee bit surprised that he's gone completely. Obviously, we've brought in a couple of strikers. If you look at which we'll get into, but with Harry, he's gone back to Aldershot, hasn't he? The club that we got him from obviously has a good relationship with them, and the fans there. I've seen that they've all been buzzing on Twitter with his arrival. So yes, again, not a massive loss to us. It probably makes sense for everyone involved, and yeah, wish him all the best. Certainly, he's the only one that's a permanent sale. Jack and Harrison will be back, hopefully for a few years to come in the future. But Harry's away again. Saw flashes, but ultimately not going to be a massive loss.
Again, I echo what you said, and I think I tweeted very similar to yourself when the deals all happened. They all just kind of made sense. As you say, Jack, the hope was that Jack would come back after his stint at Arbroath last year and probably play a more pivotal role in the team this year, and it's just not happened for him. I think there's still a lot of development with Jack personally in terms of playing as a lone striker. I think he does need to learn that role a little bit more, and going and working with a manager like Dick Campbell's, going to be eye-opening once again for him. And I'm sure, as you say, he's already hit the ground running there by getting on the score sheet at the weekend. So hopefully that works for Jack. And I know Davies mentioned that there's a deal waiting for him for next year as well. So it won't be the last we see of Jack, hopefully. But hopefully this is where he really starts to kick on and can make an impact at Livingston next season. Harrison Clark, again, echo what you've said there. It's best for him to go out and get regular minutes, and he's more likely to do that playing League Two with Kelty. It's obviously very different. He came from an academy set up down south, and it's coming into men's football. So he needs all the experience he can get. And having, in my kind of experience coaching, I've came across Kevin Thompson myself with his coaching school that he had, and he's a very, very good coach with young players and one-to-one and things like that. So I'm sure that'll benefit being a midfield type player as well that Harrison Clark is. I'm sure that'll benefit him working with what was a very top midfielder in his day in Kevin Thompson. And Harry Panayiotou, it just didn't work. Simple as that. I think, let's be honest, I think the writing was on the wall after his debut of 11 or 12 minutes. I think that kind of spelled the end from the start for him. I agree with you to an extent. I think there were little flashes here or there, but the fact is, it was a wage that was getting taken up by somebody that wasn't making a big impact on the squad, and that money can be used a lot better elsewhere. And it just made sense for Harrison to move on. But let's move on to the incomings. They're always the more exciting ones for fans. So we've had Morgan Boyce join from Liverpool, 20-year-old left-sided defender. Nubly, as you say, has come back from Arbroath, and I'm going to give this one a bash. I do apologise if he does tune into the podcast and I absolutely butcher this, but Caleb Chukwuemeka, I'm going to go with Chukwuemeka, has come in on loan from Aston Villa. Forward player, can play out wide, can play through the middle as well. What's your thoughts on the incomings at Livi?
Morgan Boyce, I'm actually excited thinking about Morgan Boyce. Obviously, Liverpool got a great pedigree. You're not Liverpool for no reason. That
could be taken very out of context. I'm very excited thinking about Morgan Boyce.
No. Great pedigree at Liverpool. We'll swiftly move away from that. Mostly with the 23s. I think he had a loan spell at Fleetwood as well, but probably not got as many games as he'd have wanted there. And I think this is a good one, probably for the future. You know, he's young, got Wales under 21 caps. Obviously, that's a good level for me. Coming in, he can challenge the likes of Tom Parks, Ayo Obileye, Jack Fitzwater, and I quite like the fact he's left-sided. You know, because often at times this season we've played with, if we play the four, it's been Fitzwater and Obileye, and obviously they're both right-footed, and you see that a lot these days. But it's just a personal preference for me. I like one right footer and one left footer. I think that adds perfect balance to the defence. You look at John Guthrie, for example, when he played with Fitzwater, things like that. But yeah, it's good. I think him and Parks will be battling it out for the left-sided centre half position. Obileye and Fitzwater for the right as well. But more importantly, adds more depth. Maybe even if he doesn't feature, he's there pushing for places. We've seen it on a lot of occasions this season, particularly with the COVID playing a part, injuries playing a part, illness, things like that. I remember Fitzwater was forced to come off at Hibs. You know, Sean Kelly's come in and played centre half, not a centre half, is he? We saw in the most recent game against Motherwell, we played a 3. Jackson Longridge played at centre half again, not his preferred position. You know, we've seen it a few times this season that players have been forced to play in the centre half role because we pretty much only had Fitzwater and Obileye. If one of them was injured, we were a wee bit done because Parks had come into the club injured. So no, it's good. It's good for us going forward, for me anyway. Newbley, I actually spoke to Joel Newbley today down at the stadium doing a few interviews for the programme. Not one for the good vibe and all that, but I generally do get a lot of good energy from Joel Newbley. He's always smiling, things like that, and he's got a great personality off the pitch. Says, I was speaking to him, we did a wee quick fire questions at the end, and sort of the question I ask at the end is, what do you love most about football? And he's talking about, I kind of see football as my art. A painter's using the canvas to paint and things like that. I see the pitch as my canvas, and I want to go out and express myself, and just a massive fan of that, the way he spoke about the game.
So he's a part-time philosopher as well, outside of football.
He speaks really well, and obviously we've seen how well he's done at Arbroath. I think we probably need to temper our expectations. It's obviously the division below, and we spoke about Jack Hamilton before with making that step up. I think Joel will be good coming in, but I'm not going to get carried away. I think there'll be maybe a few factions of the support that will be thinking, oh great, that's brilliant, Joel's back in, there's a 10-15 goal a season striker. I think we probably need to temper the expectations a wee bit, but obviously not saying you can't get excited about a player. I'm excited about Newbley coming back in as well. Be good to see him playing, how that dynamic works. Maybe him and Bruce Anderson, Alan Forrest, Bailey in there as well, and a man we'll get on to as well now. We'll call him Caleb. No, I'm joking. I think
you need to say it on commentary. Come on, mate. You need to practice now.
Looking forward to that. I was listening to Match of the Day last night. Actually, his brother was playing for Villa. I believe it's Chukwuemeka. Chukwuemeka, which is a wee bit easier. But he's obviously on loan from Aston Villa. Comes with high regard. Again, I was speaking to Davey today. He's been speaking to Stephen Gerrard, who highly recommends him. Marvin Bartley speaking to John McGinn, obviously ex-Hibs teammates. So both of them saying really good things about him. I think it was 10 goal contributions in Premier League 2. Obviously the under-23s, if you want to call it that. Yeah, no complaints at all. Two big lads coming in forward areas, which can only help, the likes of, as I say, Bruce Anderson, Alan Forrest, Odin Bailey, whoever else plays in those sort of wide positions or as the number 9. If we go with a front 3, that's what I'm assuming. But no, it's looking very positive. I'm sure we'll get on to it in terms of what else we need. What else we need to add. But what are you thinking? I've probably again said a wee bit too much there. But
no, I think with Morgan Boys, if you talk about the left footer and a bit of cover at centre half, at the start of the season, we only had two centre-halves in the building, and Tom Parks and Fitzwater. Isle was initially brought in to play in the middle of the park. So Isles really had to fill in there as a stopgap for Parks because he was behind maybe fitness-wise when he first came in. I think he also had COVID when they went on their trip over to Spain in pre-season. So Isles been chucked in there really. And Sean Kelly was brought in as well as a bit of backup when we were a bit short at centre-half. He's a 20-year-old. He's not played a lot of first-team football, but again, you don't come through an academy like Liverpool's if you're not a very good footballer. And he's obviously got a bit about him. He's been capped at international level, age group level for Wales as well. So it's definitely one I think for the future, but it gives you a bit of option, as you say, another left-sider. Allows you to have that little bit of balance, gives you the option to maybe play three at the back as well, which Davey has done on the odd occasion this season. So it'll be interesting to see what he can produce. Nubly, I think, I was actually speaking to one of the guys off Only Ackies. He was just asking a couple of questions regarding Bruce Anderson and Josh Millen and things like that. And I actually said about Nubly coming back might allow us to play maybe two up, and it might get the best out of Anderson with somebody up next to him to link up with. And he said, I can't tell you how glad I am to see the back of Nubly because of how he terrorised them when they played against them. And that's just one fan in the Championship. I've seen it regularly on a Saturday evening, comments about Joel's performances. And he's obviously been a massive hit at Arbroath. I think 4 or 5 goals he scored plus numerous assists. So in terms of his link-up play, it's obviously very good, and he comes across as a very exciting player to watch, but very humble off the pitch. And I agree with you. I think we need to temper our expectations a little bit. We saw how well Jack did at Arbroath last season. I think it was 8 goals in 15 or 16 games there. And he's obviously came back to us and he's struggled to make an impact in the first team. That's not to say Nubly won't make an impact, but it is a step up. And this is absolutely no disrespect to Arbroath. There's looking good at Arbroath, and then there's coming into the top flight and looking good on a regular basis. So I think there is a step up for him to make, but I think the benefit he's maybe got over Jack is that he's played vast majority of his career lower league football down south. He's played a lot of games at that level, a lot of men's football behind him. So you're hoping that he can make that adjustment maybe a little bit quicker. And as I say, he's an exciting player, but I do err on the side of caution and just kind of urge fans be patient, because it might not click straight away as soon as he comes on against Dundee if he starts, or if he comes off the bench. Chuck Wemaker is how you pronounce that, I think. Again, comes with a very, very good reputation, and I believe he's quite a big lad as well, 6'3" or 6'4". But I think that shows you there's obviously a great deal of respect between Davey and Stephen Gerrard, because Gerrard's pretty much every season he's been at Rangers has loaned us a player to come to us. There was Ben Williamson this season, Robbie McCrory, Ryan Hardy in the seasons that Davey's been involved. So there's obviously a great deal of respect there, and you never know, we could see players coming from Villa in the future to get some first team experience at Livingston. But I don't know a great deal about him, and I know he's had first team experience. He was signed from Northampton, played a season there, and he's obviously made a big enough impact to get signed by Aston Villa. So, I'm looking forward to seeing the new arrivals, or Nubly not a new arrival, but as you say, he sort of feels like it, having been out on loan this season. But it'll be interesting to see how they can add to us, especially the 2 forward linking players. It'll be interesting to see if they can add, because goals have been a bit of an issue for us this season. I think we're the joint second lowest scorers in the league, so it might add a little bit in terms of creativity up the top end of the park, or give us a slightly different option as well. But in terms of what we maybe need going forward, Broonie, are there any other areas that you would like to see us strengthening?
For me, it would just be somebody in to compete with Max. Obviously, we saw what happened with Dan Barden, which is obviously horrendous on a personal level and things like that. Again, we wish him still a speedy recovery and things like that. But obviously that's a position now that needs filled. Max has been good this season. He's made a couple of mistakes and things like that, which you may think would have got him dropped if there had been that number 2 pushing. But for me, he's more than made up for that with the good performances in terms of the good outweigh the bad, if you know what I'm getting at. But you've got Gary Malley on the bench. I think Davies looked at it as well. We've been linked with a Russian guy. I'm not sure on what's happening with that. All I've seen is, for me, news reports and things. Don't know what the script is, if it's a work permit or anything like that. But I think a number 2 is definitely something that we need in terms of a backup goalkeeper. Not just a backup goalkeeper, as I say, someone that will try and push Max and get the best out of the pair of them.
Yeah, you mentioned the Russian goalkeeper. I think his name is Ivan Konovalov from Rubin Kazan. I'm not going to pretend I've signed him on Football Manager and know all about him, and he's a great boy about the dressing room. Absolutely no idea who he is, so I'm not even going to pretend. What I would love to see is Davey just communicate with him. That's one of the that's genuinely one of the things I would look forward to most in that one, is watching Davey have a conversation with this guy. But yeah, I agree. It is the position on. We spoke about it before, and again echo your thoughts and sending our best wishes to Daniel in his recovery. But we do need another goalkeeper in. That's no disrespect to big Gary Malley, but Gary, I think Gary would even tell you he's not expecting to come off and play games. He's there as a backup essentially, and I think we do need someone to push Max. That little bit. He has had a big improvement this season. There has still been errors, but you never know if he has someone behind him in terms of pushing him for that number 1 jersey. It could push him on even bigger and better things than we've seen in terms of his improvement this season. So that's an area we need to add to as well. But look, there's still a couple of weeks of the window to go, so who knows, there might be some more comings and goings in the next couple of weeks. I'm delighted to welcome Dundee fan and DeeTV commentator Ethan Hampton onto the podcast. Ethan, how you doing?
Very good, Euan. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on, mate. So after a couple of seasons away in the Championship, Dundee did win promotion via the playoffs last season. What have you made of Dundee's return to the top flight?
Well, it's never really dull it down, is it? I think initially, upon your first season coming up, you just want to stay there, kind of solidify yourself as a Premiership side, and then look to build up on that. And I think there's been a bit more frustration. I would still be happy with that, don't get me wrong, but I think there's frustrations beginning to build. The fact that we continuously flirt with relegation and probably on paper have a better team than we do than in practice. So it's frustrating. I think that you see what's there and it could be better, but it's just not, and it's struggling. And like I say, there's this continuous flirting with the bottom 2. So overall, it's a bit frustrating, but it's not alarm bells going off just yet. It's kind of just in an awkward phase of the season so far. The picture will get clearer as we move on. We're only at the halfway mark. After all, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was quite a few pundits who were backing Dundee for top 6 at the start of the season. But as you say, as a newly promoted side, the first aim's surely just 10th and above, and anything above that's more a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone at Dundee would probably say the exact same thing. James McPake's not been shy of saying that to the press as well, that it's more about just staying up. If they can get a decent mid-table position or top 6, then that's just, it's a complete bonus, and should be, if it were to happen, it would be seen as a massive achievement. I mean, it's very rare that a team coming up from the Championship can really hit the ground running like that. I think the last time that was done was probably, I want to say Hearts.
Yeah.
Hearts came up the last time and they finished, I want to say 3rd in the league. And prior to that, it was actually Dundee, our last promotion to the Premiership. It was top 6 in the first season. I think fans maybe felt a bit spoiled after that.
It is what it is, isn't it? Fans just want more and more all the time, don't they? But there's a few obvious Livi connections at Livi. You know, the manager, James McPake, his assistant, Dave Mackay, and then you've got the likes of Sean Byrne, Danny Mullen, Lee Griffiths. First of all, what have you made of the job that James McPake's done since taking the gig at Dens Park?
I think he definitely deserves a lot more credit than he probably gets. At the point where he came in, I think what people really need to remember was the club wasn't in a great place. Jim McIntyre had just been sacked. To John Nelms' words himself, he said that there was a really toxic atmosphere growing in the inside of Dundee. It was a very depleted squad. He had somewhat of a fresh canvas though to work with, because a lot of the McIntyre signings were short-term loan deals, so he didn't have to really deal with too much of the deadwood. And so he had a perfect opportunity to bring in his own players. And it's not easy, being a rookie manager, going into a club of Dundee size in the Championship, having that pressure of looking for an instant jump back up. And to be fair, a lot of Dundee fans at the time in his first 2 years were very they like to analyse the stats, highlight a lot of the negative stats, and say that that's somewhat as unacceptable, etc. But the way I would look at it is you just judge it based on the season.
Yeah.
If there's a terrible away record, okay, yeah, that's got to be seen to. But at the same time, if you're second in the league, and you're challenging for the title, then, or looking for a good promotion push, look at better going towards the playoffs, then you're not really in any reason to complain until it's over and done with. You see what happens. See what happens in the finishing line. He's identified issues with Dundee in the past. I think what really helps with Dave Mackay being there as well is Dave Mackay and James McPake have arguably played in the two best teams for Dundee in two different periods. If you were to slice the 21st century in half for just a moment, I think Dave Mackay played in that early 2000s sides with all the foreign superstars, your Claudio Canigias, Jordan Mzadzes, in around. That's probably the best Dundee sides this century, whereas McPake, post the administrations, post the relegations, etc., probably then played in the best Dundee sides since then.
Yeah.
So playing in the best Dundee sides of their respective eras, I think they've taken a lot in from that, and they can kind of replicate their experiences, their thoughts on what made those teams work so well, and kind of combine their ideas together with what we've got just now. And I think they show a lot of ambition. They're not afraid to speak to bigger players. I mean, I think it was a shock for many outside of the Dundee bubble to see Charlie Adams sign when he did, for coming from the English Championship and done really well in the English Championship. May I add, to sign for a team in the second tier of Scottish football. I think Lee Griffiths at the time was an ambitious signing. Jason Cummings, again, I think at the time would have been described as a blockbuster signing. And recently, at this point in time, they tried to attempt to go for Sam Cosgrove, formerly with Aberdeen, having a loan bid from Birmingham accepted. They're not able to get the deal over the line. Yeah, I think they show a lot of ambition. I think they put a lot of their experience together, and ultimately they got the job done. They were asked to bring Dundee up from the Championship. The first season was cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So their first real shot at the full race, they got there. They got the club promoted, and now I guess the task is just to stay in the Premiership, and they're on course. It's not alarm bells off yet. It's not as comfortable as they would like to be, but like I say, you're only halfway through the season. So no, I think they've done a very good job. And the most important thing for me is they've looked to build stability in the squad. Dundee had a lot of issues in the past with overhauling the squads every season, new managers, whereas they're looking to build a team with the same core of key players and build on that, keep them there. Similar to what St Johnstone have done. I think that's the model they want to make. You say St Johnstone's name out loud, you think of players like Wotherspoon, Craig, guys that have been there for years. I think that's what they're looking to do with Dundee. They want guys like Sean Byrne, they want guys like Paul McGowan, Cammy Kerr. Those are guys they want to keep at Dundee in the long term to build the team around.
Yeah, Sean Byrne is one you just mentioned there. I believe he's just signed an extended deal. I know he's out injured just now, but he was a huge fan favourite when he was at Livingston. I believe you're quite a big fan of Sean as well.
Yeah, Dundee fans have really taken to Sean Byrne. It was actually a slow start to begin with, because when we first signed Sean Byrne, it appeared that he was being played as more of a box-to-box midfielder to begin with. And he does have some really good qualities when moving forward. To begin with, he made some real Ozil-esque assists that I think kind of blew people away. That's just not simply what he's best at, and we got the best out of him when we got to see him play in holding midfield. Yeah, after a slow start when he got to play in the position that he was favoured to play in, Dundee fans I think instantly took to him. It was not a great redemption arc, because I wouldn't say it was necessarily that he was hated or totally disliked. It was just a bit of a slow start. Fans, weren't really getting to see the best of him. And now that they do, they fully appreciate him. And I don't think there's a single Dundee fan that was really disheartened to see him sign a new contract as of late. And I'm delighted to see that. Like, he's one of those guys. Like I say, I'm happy to see that Dundee want to build the team around guys like him.
Yeah, Sean, you talk about some of his assists and things like that. The thing I always remember with Sean is he loves a wee chop when he's on the ball, and he can send folk for a hot dog quite easily. He was remarkable at that at Livi, but he was part of arguably one of the best and successful Livingston sides, that back-to-back promotion. So, his Livi fans have a lot of time from, and he's part of a long list, as we mentioned. You also had Leigh Griffiths re-sign in the summer on loan from Celtic. What have you made of him since coming back? And I know he's been out the team recently, and Danny Mullen, another ex-Livi man's, kind of came in for him as well. So what's your thoughts on Griffiths, Danny Mullen coming in as well, and I know there's been a bit of speculation with Griffiths if he's going to stay or if he'll leave. Yeah,
so to begin with, Leigh Griffiths, when we signed him in the summer, I was very, very happy with that. I mean, for me personally, when I was a kid, he was the superstar of Dundee. He was my favourite player. So getting to kind of relive and see him in the Dundee jersey, scoring a couple goals, it's a nice little trip down memory lane. It feels like I'm back in 2010 again. But I think, on paper, it's a very underwhelming impact. But at the same time, the way I see it is, with the career he's had and having seen him at the peak of his powers in the past, there's not a doubt in my mind that in terms of his finishing ability, I would perhaps make the argument he is the best natural finisher in Scottish football. I think he's just always had that about him. He's such a clinical goal scorer. His career at Hibs, Celtic, Dundee previously, he scored goals everywhere he went, and he was a fan favourite everywhere he went. So I think because he's had a lot of time out of the game, I think it was twice he had the career break to begin with at Celtic. Now, a lot of pros often say that they need as much time back in the game as they had out to get back to where they were before. Yeah. And I think there's a difference between your fitness and your match fitness, so to speak, your match form. So I think he is fit. I think I reckon if you were to ask anyone inside of Dundee, how does his fitness hold up in training when they're doing the running, when they play games, when they wear those things to measure their heart rate and everything. Yeah. I reckon they'll say he keeps well, but it's just more about getting into the groove of things, so to speak. And with every game, I think he's been looking better. He looks better. He's slowly getting there, and it's just a slower transition to get there because I feel of those absences in the past. I think that's just what it is to me. At least that's just my view of it. I could be wrong, could be right, but that's just the way I see it. And I think he's worth sticking with, because once you get Leigh Griffiths fully match fit, then you're getting exactly what the striker that you signed for. You're getting your goal scorer. You're getting this absolute nightmare for defenders. And I think Dundee's a good fit for him as well. I don't think there's a better place for him to be as well. I think as an environment, you'll feel quite safe and welcome. He works with a manager that he's got a very close relationship with. Played with both of them at Livi when he first broke through into the Livi team. So, and at Hibernian as well, he was essentially like the big brother figure to him. Had to kind of keep him out of trouble. At Livingston, I think there was a whole kind of division of Livi youth players coming through, and they all said the same thing when it came to McPhee. They kind of said he was captain for a reason. That he was always like a big brother to all of them. So yeah, not a doubt in my mind, he wants to play for the manager, and there's a lot of respect there for him. And yeah, like I say, I think it's the speculation. I don't know the truth. I think no one knows except for James McPake at the moment. There's speculation that perhaps Griffiths will get released from Celtic and could be coming to Dundee permanently. There's speculation that he could be leaving Dundee and Celtic completely and perhaps going abroad. I'm not sure, but I for one, I would personally quite like to see us stick with him and see us get the best version of Lee Griffiths that we know we can unlock. Because it would really annoy me. I'd be very pissed off if we help get him the match fitness. He goes and signs for someone else and hits the ground running and starts every week. That'd be peak Dundee, especially if it's for a team like just totally, for example, St Johnstone, who is competing with us at our end of the table. It'd just be a total shoot to your own foot.
I do agree with you in terms of when Lee is on it. I do think he's one of the best finishers and natural finishers in Scottish football. He was like that as a 16, 17-year-old at Livi. I mind him coming through our 19s team, and it used to be a shock when he hadn't scored at least 5 in a 19s game. Like he was an absolute born goal scorer. And if you can get him anywhere remotely near the levels he had a few years ago at Celtic, then you're right, he's worth taking the chance on. But going on to the game that's coming up, it's a huge game for both clubs, to put it bluntly. There's only 4 points between us at the bottom end of the table. How do you see Dundee approaching the game on Tuesday night?
In terms of formation and tactics, it's perhaps a bit more blurry because I'll confess I'm not up to date with who's all back and who's off fit. I think Charlie Adam will be back for the game.
Yeah.
I think he'll be bound to be. He had an injury that kept him out for the past couple of games. Because the last time I saw Dundee was against Aberdeen. And that was with a very depleted squad. We had to get Dave Mackay on the bench to register as a player. But I would imagine Dundee would go into it the same way that they would pretty much most games. I think we're very much an attacking outfit. The tendency would be a front three and look to Charlie Adam to utilise his balls out wide before trying to find the man in the middle. Whether that man in the middle is, it could be Griffiths, Mullen, Cummings, Jakubiak potentially. Who knows? But certainly they'll eye games like this to be 6 pointers. With all due respect to Livingston, of course, I think when it comes down to teams nearer our position in the table, those are the games that you've got to win. And I think Livingston would be the exact same. They'll look at Dundee and say, well, that's a game we've got to win. It pushes them further down. It keeps us further up. It's more points on the board. So I think we'll be in for an entertaining game anyway. I think both sides will be very much up for it. And I think they'll both have very similar outlooks. It'll just be both sides looking to attack one another. I think with Livi being at home, I wouldn't expect them to sit back. I think I would probably expect Livi to try and get in Dundee's faces and have a go. Because after all, Dundee, I think they've shown throughout the season they've got a lot of vulnerabilities. Can have some real disaster classes in defending phases of play. When it comes to these games, the 6 pointers, specifically with Ross County, Dundee have got a dreadful record this season.
Yeah, that's probably the low point of the season was the 5-0, wasn't it? At Dens, wasn't it?
The 3-2 at the Highlands as well was abysmal. Because you see, the 5-0 at Dens, you can't argue with. It was a drubbing and Dundee deserved it. Dundee did not show up. We thought we had finally kind of found our form, and then that just smacked us out of nowhere. And then we were fine after that. We beat St Mirren the following Saturday. I think that game was midweek against Ross County. But then when we played them in the Highlands, we were very much the better team. But 3 amateur mistakes to concede 3 goals and chuck the game completely. When you've worked so hard to cement yourself in the lead, when you've worked so hard to kind of play them off the park, just to kind of give them a lifeline, to give them an equaliser, and then to gift them the victory. So to me, it shows that with Dundee, when it comes to the 6 pointers thus far in the season, the big occasions, they're yet to kind of really turn it on. Now, you could argue that perhaps we needed to check in the 5-0 game. I think maybe was Charlie Adam maybe up for that game as well. I think for a lot of these big games when we miss key players like Adam and Byrne, like it's not an excuse, but I think when you've got these players back on your side, they can sometimes be the difference.
Yeah,
that was my feeling certainly when Dundee lost at Tannadice early in the season. Was it came down to very fine margins. If you had a guy like Charlie Adam playing on that day, then perhaps those fine margins can balance more in our favour, and with sneak a result, albeit a draw or a victory, because that's what we look for these players to do, to kind of create something out of nothing, to show up on the big stage, to take the spotlight. Yeah, like I say, it's frustrating in one sense, but at the other, you can't have too many complaints. So I'll be hoping Dundee show up with a very professional display, look to attack from the start, and really if we're going to concede it, just don't make it so cheap, because I concede it so much. It's always cheap goals. If Livingston can pass it out the back, absolutely bulldoze their way through the Dundee team, some electrifying passing and put it top corner, I wouldn't complain. But if it's going to be a crappy corner at the near post because someone wasn't marking his man and it's a cushioned header that somehow went through the keeper's hands like it's poppadoms, I'm just But yeah, no, I think that's my thoughts anyway. I think we'll be in for a good game on Tuesday.
Well, here's hoping, because the game at Dens, me and Angus, who do the podcast, we sat and we're like, this is going to be a goal fest. Both teams' defences aren't great, etc. And then it was 0-0, and it was one of the most drab 0-0s I think, especially from a Livi perspective that day. We were very lucky to come away from Dens with a point that day. But
and a goal to Isaac having an absolute blinder. I thought he was tremendous that game. Yeah,
exactly. One of the games that he has really produced this season was the game at Dens. But as I mentioned at the start, you provide the commentary on DeeTV. How is it you got involved with that, and how have you found that experience over the last 18 months, 2 years?
It was the start of the season Dundee got relegated. At the very start, Neil McCann was in charge. Dundee had put a post on Facebook saying that they were looking for applications for a commentator for DeeTV. So I had a massive passion for Dundee, always been interested in media. And I think, yourself, you probably think it's easier than it probably looks. You watch football, you play FIFA, you're very used to hearing commentary all the time. You maybe do it in your head sometimes when you're playing FIFA on mute or something. So I went onto my computer. I grabbed my headset from my PlayStation controller, plugged it in. At this point, I knew how to edit videos. I had a YouTube channel at the time, and it was Dundee compilations, because something like no one else was doing it. I think there's now a couple of like to take credit that I've maybe inspired a fad, but so I got some highlights together of a Dundee derby from 2016. I had written a script. I'd taken notes of the situation between both clubs at the time, players that were injured, suspended, who was in form, just all these little things, and I plugged my headset into the computer and just as articulately as I could commentate throughout the highlights. And I sent it to Dundee's head of media, Tommy Young. I can remember being in English class. I think it was 17 or 18 at the time. I can't remember. I got an email back from Tommy saying that he enjoyed the video I'd sent him, and if I'd be interested. It was on a Friday. It was a Friday morning, and I got a message to say, "Would you be interested in coming to McDermott Park tomorrow to have a go at it?" It was my commentary debut. Yeah, McDermott Park. I think Dundee had an all right travelling support on the day. Just to be disappointed. I think St Johnstone beat us 1-0.
Always typical the debut. It was the same for Broonie. Again, he does the podcast with us and he does LFC Live. And his debut was the first game in lockdown, which was away at St Mirren, and we lost 1-0 and we were horrific. And
Dundee weren't very good that day, but I came out of that with a real sense of pride. And they've asked me back every week since, so I love it. Listen, you get a whole new respect for it when it's yourself doing it. Because on my debut, I had stage fright for about 15-20 minutes, and that's very, very unlike me. I've done acting before, I've done public speaking before. I'm fine with being in front of an audience, but I guess the thought of knowing there's an audience without seeing them must have been a bit more severe for me for some reason. But yeah, no, it's been a great ride. Plenty of highs, plenty of lows, but I wouldn't have changed it. It's just great, because obviously I'm a fan as well. So it just means it means a lot getting to do it. It's a privilege to me, and getting to meet some of the players afterwards as well. I speak to McPake fairly often for post-match interviews, and still sometimes I feel a little bit starstruck. It sometimes doesn't completely settle in. So yeah, no, it's been great, and it's been great following Dundee through whether it's crap or whether it's great. It's a very colourful story, nonetheless.
Exactly. Well, it's clear to see that you're enjoying the experience, Ethan. I can, obviously watching you on camera just now, I can see how buzzing you are just even chatting about it. But if I need to push you on a prediction for Tuesday night, what are you predicting?
I hate doing predictions before I see team lines, but I would back Dundee for the win. Realistically, I would actually think it would be a draw. I think maybe another 0-0 or a 1-0. That's what my head says, but my heart's going with a 2-0 Dundee win. Charlie Adam to score on his return and perhaps laying up one of the forwards, Paul McMullen or whoever decides to play up front that day.
I mean this in the nicest possible way. I hope you have a thoroughly miserable Tuesday night, Ethan. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's greatly appreciated, and obviously best of luck for the remainder of the season with your commentary duties on DeeTV.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Be nice to have a nice little chat about football. Always up for it. And yeah, like I say, hope your Tuesday night's absolutely shite. And and yeah, best of luck for the remainder of the season, except when you're playing the D's. And especially the best of luck when you're playing against the lot across the road.
Aye, we've taken 4 points off them already this season, so there you go. We're doing our job.
Oh, yeah.
It's a return of the Scottish Cup as we enter at the 4th round this weekend. We face familiar opponents in the form of Ross County. Euan, maybe a little bit of a boring draw when it was drawn, but how do you see this one going?
It is a boring draw, isn't it? It really is. I long for the days where we drew like Irvine Meadow away and stuff like that, you know, somewhere completely random, very different. You're probably never going to go back. I long for cup ties like that, but look, it's a tricky tie because I think Ross County are, the way they set up and the way they play could be quite an effective cup side. They are pretty decent on the front foot. It's not that long ago we played them, just prior to Christmas, and with that being a league game, both teams in and around the relegation places in the league, it proved to be a pretty cagey game, with neither team really wanting to lose. It came across as it's a one-off cup tie. I don't believe there's replays in the cup this year, so it goes to extra time. It needs to be decided on the day, so both teams need to have a bit of a go at it, and I think that might make for a decent, entertaining cup tie. As I say, Ross County, I don't think they've had any issues in terms of an attacking sense this season. They've been pretty threatening going forward. We saw that in the game up in Dingwall. They caused us a whole heap of problems. The two wide players, Charles Cook and Hungbo in particular, caused us a lot of problems. And they've got goals from the likes of Spittle in the middle of the park as well. I've said it before, he seems like a bit of a player reborn in the last 12 months or so at Ross County. So they've got threats going forward, but at the back, I think they have been ropey, to say the least. I think they've got one of the worst defensive records in the league. They've lost the boy Harry Clark, who's gone to Hibs, who they had on loan from Arsenal, so it's probably weakened them a little bit further. I think the boy Baldwin, from comments that I've seen from Ross County fans, he's not the most popular figure, and I think we saw it at times that there's a mistake in him as well. So look, I think we'll get chances in the game, but I do think it lends itself to being a fairly exciting game because of the way and the style that Ross County have been playing in under Malky Mackay. So, and with it, because there's no replay either, it does need to be decided on the day. I think it could open itself up to being a decent cup tie.
Yeah, that is a massive positive that we can't draw the game and we aren't forced to go up to Dingwall for the 18th time in this season. So that's good. There's obviously replays up until the third round, I think, but it's from this round that there are none, which is obviously a good thing. And something I was looking at as well before we get into it, I had a wee thought there. I was like, can Joel Newbley play? Because obviously Arbroath would have played in the third round, but that's obviously been spoken about between both managers, and Joel wasn't in the squad for Arbroath's win in the last round. Cannot remember for the life of me who they knocked out, but he wasn't playing, so that's a good thing. He's available, but no, as you say, it's a bit of a boring tie, but it's winnable. I think both teams will be looking at it. It's winnable. Not been a lot between the sides this season. We've seen we won 3-2 up there. For me, wouldn't go as far as saying it was a robbery, but you know,
close to it.
I don't think we were brilliant on the day. I think they probably deserved a lot more, and if they score that penalty and it goes to 2-0, it's a totally different game, and we're maybe on the end of a hiding. But the home game as well, not a lot in it. Obviously takes a late equaliser from Obolai, as you mentioned. So, no, I don't really know what to expect, to be honest. I'm just looking for a better performance. I've said it a lot this season, but if we play like we had played against the likes of, Hearts and Hibs at home, for me has been the best we've played this season, in my opinion anyway. Obviously, we lost the Hearts, which still frustrates the life out of me, even though that first half performance was incredible. And the Hibs game was brilliant, 1-0 going on 3 or 4. But yeah, if we can play as well as that, then I think we should be, we're capable of brushing Ross County aside. But obviously they're a good team. I just don't think we've done ourselves justice in these type of games this season. You look at, the 2 games against Ross County, obviously 4 points in them, but Dundee probably held on to a draw there. They probably deserve to win it. So it's these type of games that we struggle in. Yeah, sort of looking forward to it. We've not really had a good Scottish Cup run, have we? In recent years, League Cup, we've been very good in the last couple of seasons, particularly last year. But the Scottish Cup, knocked out against Aberdeen on penalties last year. I think it was Inverness the year before, Hearts the year before that. So it's been kind of tough.
Yeah, I was actually about to say very similar. I was having a think before we did this, covering the Scottish Cup, and I think we had I saw a stat that we'd only won something. It was something ridiculous, like we'd lost 8 of 10 third, fourth round ties whenever we've gone into the competition. I don't know how accurate that is, but that was maybe a couple of seasons back, that stat. But I was also having a think when we last maybe had a decent run in the cup, and I'm going back to probably the 04-05 season when we got to the quarter final and we got knocked out at Tynecastle. We got beat 2-1, and that game kind of ignited our great escape that season. But I think that's the last time we got to even the last 8 in the Scottish Cup. So it's not been the kindest competition to us. As you say, the League Cup, we've had a very good record over the last, in particular since the group stages came in. We've had a very good record of getting to, as a minimum, the last 8. And so it would be nice to have a good Scottish Cup run this year and have a right good go at it. Do you think this maybe gives Davy the opportunity to have a look at the likes of Newbley, maybe coming in from the start, for example, with it being a cup tie? Because personally, I don't see him coming in for the Dundee game from the start. But do you think it's maybe an opportunity for someone like him to come in?
No, I think you're right. If you're going to prioritise one game over the other, it's definitely Tuesday night that's the most important. Trying to get 3 points on the board anyway in a tough game, but a winnable game at home to Dundee in the league, and then not experiment as such. You're not looking to experiment in these games again. It's winnable at home to Ross County, but yeah, if you're asking me if I'd like to see boys tried out as such, in one of the 2 games, I'd definitely go Ross County. But that's not to say that it'll be a negative. We don't know what will happen on Tuesday night, obviously, but it's difficult to talk about team selection, isn't it, when you don't know what will happen in terms of injuries, things like that. But I think the winter break's been good for us because it's probably allowed, the likes of, hopefully, touchwood, Scott Pittman to get back to fitness. I don't think he was too far away 3 weeks ago, so I imagine he'll be close to getting back to full fitness. Maybe not fully match sharp yet, but you know what Pitts is like, he'll run for days. So I'm looking forward to seeing those type of guys back. Craig Sibbald had again been in and out of the team. He'd maybe only be managing an hour and things like that, just coming back from his injury. So it'll be good to see guys like this. But it's looking at the Ross County game. Obviously, you've discussed the Dundee game with Ethan from the DeeTV. It is winnable, and I am quietly confident. I think it's one that we'll be able to see out. But I can see it going to extra time.
I'm with you. I think it could go to extra time as well.
There's not a lot between us, is it?
Nah, I think that's the thing. I said this on another podcast I did just before Christmas, and I think you could get to the split this season. I think there's very little between teams that you could have 4 or 5 teams all in the mix to be in about the playoffs and the relegation places. I think there's so little to choose between teams. But what do you expect then? Give us a scoreline for the Ross County Cup tie.
1-1 brackets 2-1 Livingston close brackets. So Livingston to win in extra time.
Good. I'm going to have to add like AET at the end of the predictions this time, haven't I? Do we get cancelled out? How are we working this with the point system on the prediction league this week?
I think I'm too far behind anyway. just looking at the last game, obviously, when that went to 1-1, say if that had been a cup tie and it gone to extra time, I think with the way the momentum was with us, I think we'd have gone on to win that game. Albeit there was 3 or 4 minutes of injury time in that game, but I think if we'd have got in and regrouped, I think we'd have gone on to win that game in the end. So hopefully we can win it in the 90 minutes. But if not, I think we're more than capable of getting the win in extra time and going through. Most importantly, what about yourself?
I can see it going to extra time, but I'm going to back us to get it done in 90 minutes, and I'm going to go 2-1 Livy. I think both teams will score. As I say, Ross County have been fairly decent going forward this season, but I think we'll win it 2-1, and hopefully obviously see us into the hat for the next round, and we can get a decent draw. But just a little shout about the pricing and things like that. Very good by the club. I think it's £15 for an adult, but under 16s can go in for free. So it was great to see a few more bums on seats for the last game against Ross County in the league. So great opportunity for youngsters across Livingston to get down and watch an all Premiership cup tie on Saturday. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livy. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search Talk Livy to find us on those socials, and you'll also find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find those episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel over there as well. If none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivypodcast.libsyn.com, and over there you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years if you want to troll through the archives.
As we say, all our episodes are on the usual podcast streaming sites, and over the festive period we hit a bit of a landmark, which was 25,000 downloads since we started the podcast. So a massive shout out to all our listeners over the last few years. This would be absolutely pointless if nobody tuned in. So for a tiny podcast like ourselves to have 25,000 folk tune in and listen to us ramble on about Livingston Football Club is quite humbling, to be honest. So thank you very much for that. But that is it for this week's episode. And thanks to our listeners for tuning into this one as well. And let's hope for another great week following the Lothians' finest football team.
2 wins, 2 nights on the booze.
Livingston, oh Livingston, the Almondvale Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premiership.